Welcome to Hot Wheels Race Science. Hey, here on Race Science, what we're trying to do is we're trying to answer some questions about what actually makes a Hot Wheels car faster. We're trying to use some good science to investigate whether certain things are myths or whether they actually work and make cars faster. So we're here to answer your questions. We've actually got one here today from Jimmy. Jimmy writes, I've heard that when I get a new Hot Wheels car that I should break it in before I send it off to a race. Do cars really need to be broke in? And if so, how much breaking in do I need to do? That is a good question, Jimmy. Breaking in Hot Wheels cars. Starting and operating your vehicle. New vehicle break-in. Your vehicle does not need an elaborate break-in, but it will perform better in the long run if you follow these break-in guidelines.
1.
Keep your speed at 55 miles per hour or less for the first 500 miles.
2.
Do not drive at any one constant speed, fast or slow.
3.
Avoid making hard stops.
4.
Do not tow a trailer during break-in.
5.
Following break-in, engine speed and load can be gradually increased. All right. Breaking in your car. Wow, who knew? So real cars need to be broken in. That's kind of cool. So what about Hot Wheels cars? Obviously, Hot Wheels cars work a little bit different than real cars. The real car break-in was mostly in reference to the engine, which we don't have in Hot Wheels cars. But I wonder if the same principles apply, right? So does it work for Hot Wheels cars? And what even is breaking in anyways? Break-in, or breaking in, also known as run-in or running in, is the procedure of conditioning a new piece of equipment by giving it an initial period of running, usually under a light load, but sometimes under a heavy load or normal load. It is generally a process of moving parts wearing against each other to produce the last small bit of size and shape adjustment that will settle them into a stable relationship for the rest of their working life. Interesting. Okay, so breaking in is when we have two parts that are moving, rubbing on each other maybe, and they kind of settle into a nice relationship. Oh, Will. Oh, Axel. I love you. I love you too. Yeah, so on a Hot Wheels car, we definitely have parts that are moving. We have the wheel that spins. It comes in contact with the track as it runs along. It also comes in contact with the axle. And the wheel also comes in contact with the chassis as it kind of rubs on it too. So definitely some places where we have moving parts. And so that kind of fits the break-in description. But scientifically speaking, how would breaking in help? I need a chart or a board or something. Let's see if we can... Alright, so I can see scientifically maybe a couple of reasons why breaking in a car may be legitimate. And the first one has to do with friction, right? So when we have any two surfaces that slide across each other, you're going to have friction. Friction is just a resistive force to the movement, right? And here's why it happens. This is really cool, actually. So no matter how smooth the surface looks, if you zoom in far enough, right? You zoom in far enough, you're going to see lots of little hills and valleys. The surface is actually going to look rough, right? And it depends on how smooth the surface is, how far you have to zoom in, right? So on asphalt, you don't have to zoom in very far and it already looks rough. But on ice, you have to zoom in a long ways, but eventually you're even going to get down to those water molecules, and those water molecules have a shape, right? A couple of atoms poking out here and over here, right? And they're going to look rough. And so it kind of depends on how far you have to zoom in, but everything gets rough. Even if you have to get down to the atomic level, on some level, there is some roughness to any object. And what happens is, with all these little hills and valleys, as they try to slide past one another, they get caught. And they don't want to go past each other, and so you have to push a little harder to get that thing to, bump up over that next hill and that next valley. And so as you do that, that's the resistive force. That's friction, right? And so the idea here is then maybe a break-in might help to smooth out some of those hills and valleys. Basically, we might look at a break-in as kind of like a final sanding. Obviously, you'd be sanding with something pretty smooth already, right? The axles and the wheel are already pretty smooth. But also, if you look at, like, I don't know, 7,000 grit sandpaper, that's actually pretty smooth stuff too, but you're still sanding, right? You're still sanding with it. And so if you've got something rubbing against each other, it could be that those hills and valleys kind of get knocked down a little bit, and so that makes it just a little bit smoother and just a little bit less friction, and perhaps then your car is a little bit faster. The real question is the axle rubbing on the wheel going to cause any sanding to happen? Is it going to knock down any of those hills and valleys, or are they already too smooth relative to each other to be able to do that? That's kind of one of the questions, but it's a possibility. The second possibility, I think, is the release agent, right? When these cars are made, they're put into molds, they're cast, right? Particularly the wheels are put into molds, and they put a release agent on the molds to help them come out of the molds easily. And so there may be some residue release agent on some of the parts of the car. Particularly, let's talk about the wheel, for instance. So the wheel contacts the car, or has contact in several different places. The wheel contacts the track. It also rubs on the axle, and the inside part of the hub also rubs on the chassis. And so there are three places where you might have some rubbing. And if there's residue from the release agent on there, that could affect how that rubs. The release agent coefficient of friction may be different than just the plastic or the metal. And so by rubbing and breaking in the car and rubbing off that release agent, that could cause the car to run slightly different. So anyways, those are two things that I've thought of that could possibly make a break-in a legitimate thing. So anyways, though, really it comes down to we just need to get some cars on the track and test it, right? We need to try this out and see if breaking in really works or not. So we need to do...
An experiment?
Yeah, an experiment. We need to do an experiment. Let's get some cars on the track and do an experiment. Okay, let's do an experiment. Yeah, so here's the plan. We got 12 cars, and we're going to run them down the track, and we're going to get a time on them. So brand new, in the package, open them up, first time down the track, we'll get a time on them. And then we're going to run them down the track 9 more times. So total of 10 times. Got a nice little data chart here. We'll keep some times on here. And as we run these cars down the track, I guess what we're looking for is, do they get faster, right? So through those 10 runs, we'll look at the data. We'll maybe graph it out and see if these cars are getting faster or not. I'm going to run them in the same lane, right? So we'll reduce that variable. So this particular car will run in lane 1 all the time. Lane 2 for this guy, and so on. We'll keep track of those times, and we'll see if we get any improvement. The other question was, like, how much break-in do we need to do? So I think after 10 times, I'm going to run them a whole bunch more times, and then we'll get just a little bit more data on them, and we'll see if there's been any improvement after a whole bunch of runs, right? So we'll kind of track the first 10 runs, and then we'll run a whole bunch more, and then we'll get some times on those, and we'll see what happens. So what do we got? We got a couple of Jaguars we're gonna raise, a couple of rally cats will get going. Got some zoom ins. Oh yeah. Got some governors. Roger Dodger 2.0. Yeah. And then a couple of 55 Chevys. Be kind of fun. So kind of a little bit of a variety. Most of these castings have some racing type history, seem to have performed well at some point maybe. Anyways, should be a good variety, and this will be a lot of fun. So we'll run our experiment, and then once we get our experiment run, we can analyze the data. So I guess we got to get these cars open, and then go get set up on the big track. We'll get the timing system set up, and then we're going to be running some cars, man. It's going to be fun. Love it. Ready to test. Experiment time. Oh, yeah. All right, well, we're going to do this experiment. We got the cars in the gate. We're going to run them down the track and get some times on them. And then we'll look at the data. See if this break-in thing's a thing. All right, let's go. So, that was a lot of racing, but all the cars have run 10 times in the same lane. They've had 10 runs, and we've recorded all the times. So, it'll be kind of interesting to look and see. I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to run them probably just 10 more times down the track, not worrying about times. And then I want to get a few more times on them and see if with a bunch more runs, if we're seeing any other kinds of improvement. And I may actually do that like 2 times. I think I'm going to run at 10, maybe then give them maybe 3 time trials, and then run them 10 times down the track again, and 3 more time trials, and then maybe we'll see if there seems to be any more improvement or less improvement or no improvement or whatever. So, anyways, I got a little more racing to do, so I guess I better get to it, right? Yeah! Okay, so all the cars have run 10 more times. What I'm going to do is now I'm going to run them 3 more times and get times on them. And then maybe we'll compare this group of 3 to the earlier set and see if we got any improvement. So here we go. Let's get some times on these babies. Okay. Whew. So we got them all run 3 more times. And what we'll do is we'll look at those times compared with the times after the before the extra 10 runs. And I think we'll compare those. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to stop there. Just glancing at those times, I don't feel like I'm seeing like a huge improvement. I kind of feel like things have leveled off. So I think what we'll do is we'll take a look at the data that we got. And then if we feel like more runs could tell us more information, maybe if we're still seeing an improving trend and we need to run them more to see when that trend finally stops, then we'll do it. But I don't know. I think it'll be fun to kind of look at this data and see where we're at, see if we see any trends, see if we're seeing any improvement. I gotta say, just glancing at the data right now, man, the times are kind of all over the place. I don't know, some runs are pretty fast, some are a little bit slower. There is definitely some variation from run to run as far as the times go. So it'll be interesting to see when we really crunch some numbers and look at the data as to whether that variation still shows improvement, right? So anyways, it'll be fun to do. So I guess we got to go crunch some numbers now. Uh-oh, math alert, math alert, math alert. Nah, anyways, let's go do it. This will be cool. Let's. I think probably what we'll do is we're gonna put these into Excel and maybe get some graphs at first. Then we'll probably calculate some averages so we can compare some averages that way. And I don't know. We'll just go have fun. We'll go have fun with some numbers, man. Yeah. All right. Wow. So that was a lot of fun. Got to race all the cars and race all the cars and race them again. Woo! It was a lot of racing, right? But it was cool. Recorded all the data and got it all written down. And as I was doing it, I don't know, it was really hard to tell whether we were seeing improvement or not. So what I decided to do was I took all our numbers and we put it right here into the computer. And then I graphed them. And graphing is a great way to take numbers and make them really visual, right? So hopefully at a glance we can kind of see what's going on. And so that was the first thing that I decided to do. I just wanted to graph them and see what was going on. And then after that I continued to look at the data a little bit more, kind of play around with the numbers a little bit, and really try to see if there was a relationship between, and that's what we're trying to prove, is there a relationship between the more times you run the cars and the speed of the cars. The real question is, as we run them a little bit more, do they get a little faster, right? So that's the relationship we're looking at. More runs means faster cars, right? Or times going down. So that's kind of what we're looking at for the graph. If there is that relationship, if indeed breaking in is something, then as we move further over the graph or more times run, then we should see the times going down. That's kind of the initial relationship that I was looking for. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to bring you in close, take a look at the computer with me, and let's see. First glance, let's see what we saw. All right, so this is kind of what I did. Again, I just called this the first glance. So what I wanted to do is I went ahead and put in all my data over here, and then I graphed it. And the large red dot right here, this is our first run. And so at first glance, what I kind of wanted to do was just compare most of the dots to the first run, right? And so as we look at this one, most of the dots are below the first run, but we don't see this nice trend where maybe we just, as we get more and more runs here, that the times just keep coming down and down and down. Down here on the bottom, this is the number of runs, so this was run number 10 right here. And you can see the time was just a little under 2.48. So that's kind of how we read the graph there. So, but generally it looks like they're mostly under the first run, although they're kind of just scattered all around. Even out here after we did the 10 additional runs into the 20, 21, 22 runs, you can see we're still kind of all over the place. We had a fast-ish one, a slow one, really fast one. So I don't know, but generally I would say that one seems to show maybe there's something to this breaking in. It definitely has a lot of runs under its first one, right? So Let's go to the next one here. Now this is what I was hoping to see, right? This is showing just this nice improvement, right? As we go down and even as we break it in further, wow, right? That, if I were to just say right now, if this were the only car I tested, boom, baby, break-in works, right? The more I ran, the lower these seem to get, right? So that one definitely shows some potential for breaking in. So that was the second zoom in. Let's go to our first Roger Dodger car.
This is boring.
Hey, some people want to see the data.
Not me.
Well, all right, you can just fast forward about 5 minutes and just get to the summary if you want. But for everybody else, let's keep going. Again, I don't know. I kind of feel like this one shows a pretty good trend of improvement. You know, here's our first run, and actually it looks like our second run, boom, was a little slower. And then we were kind of right in the same neighborhood for those first 4 runs. But after that, you know, definitely we've got some improvement. We're getting a little faster, and even these runs out here after I ran the 10 more times and then took 3 more times, we got a little faster. So that guy's looking good too. So his first 3, I say, just at first glance, seem to show some improvement with breaking in. This guy, man, he's just all over the place, right? Here's our first run, the red dot, if you'll notice. And then we've got, I don't know, we've got a pretty good group up above the red dot. We've got a group below the red dot. And as we get further to the right, they're just scattered all over, right? We've got a big improvement, then we're a little slower, improvement way slower up in here, a little bit faster. I run it 10 more times and then start getting the clock back on it, and man, a couple of slow ones, but then, woo, kind of a fast one. You know what? This guy doesn't really show a pattern. It's just kind of all over the place. So, I don't know, that one's not super convincing. Go on to our Rally Cat. This guy looks like he actually had a pretty quick time to begin with. Definitely some improvement here, but then after that, it's pretty spotty. Let's say that we have about as big a group above as we do below, right? So he's not super convincing either. Our second Rally Cat, in this case, here's his beginning, his first run time, the red dot, and then if you'll notice, we've got quite a few below, right? Quite a few below that one. Really only, I think, 1 above that. So I would say that one definitely showed a little bit of improvement. Let's look at this is our first governor. And this is exactly what the opposite of what we're hoping for. He starts out with his red dot down here, and then really it kind of looks like there's an upward trend, which means this guy's actually getting slower the more we run it. Good grief. All right, over to governor number 2. Well, we've got our dot here. We've got a few that are right around that same neighborhood. Actually, quite a few that are around that same neighborhood. A few that are definitely slower, and then a few that are faster. Overall, I guess, you know, if we draw the line over there, we've got quite a few that are better than the red dot, lower than the red dot. Although, like I say, this handful here are really close. I mean, when we're talking about the timing system, these are all pretty close. But we'll give that the nod and say, you know, first glance, breaking in could be a thing there. Our first Jaguar, I don't know, I'm not feeling confident about this guy. We've got a red dot here. This is our first run. We've got a few that are underneath that, but for the most part, they're above, right? But it doesn't show a nice like pattern. They're kind of randomly just scattered all up and down, right? I'm not feeling like that's showing us much. Our second Jaguar, a little bit of the same story. Here's our we got our initial time, the red dot, and then we've got a pretty good group above and pretty good group below. Again, I'm not seeing any kind of trend like, you know, definitely as we run it more it's improving. I'm not seeing that in this one. Our first gasser, this guy actually does look like there's a little bit of a trend, but it's headed in the wrong direction. This kind of looks like the more we run it, the higher these get. right? So, but that's definitely not, showing or proving breaking in, so I'm not liking that one too much. And finally, this is our last car, the last gasser, and again, it is actually seems to be showing a slowing down trend. As we run it more, times are getting higher, right? Not what we were hoping to see, but definitely not proving the break-in. So I don't know. Just again, from this first initial glance, as you're looking at it, probably have some of the same questions I did. What's this showing? Where are we at? We've got, seems like a little bit of both, right? So let's take a look at the cars. Maybe we'll separate the cars out and kind of show you who at first glance did seem to show some improvement and who didn't. All right, so well, first glance, you can see from the numbers, nothing definitive, right? So we had 5 that looked like, yeah, maybe, seems like a bunch of the times are below the first time. And then we had 7 who, I don't know, they were kind of scattered all over. Even some of them looked like they were getting slower. So, again, I don't know, nothing super definitive, nothing convincing yet. So I thought I'd dig into the numbers a little bit more. Another thing I thought I'd try was compare averages, right? So I wanted to take the average time and compare it to the first time, and see if their average time was below or above or pretty close to the first time. So that's the second thing we did. So let me bring you back in here and we'll take a look at those numbers. All right, so the next thing I did was I just went and calculated. So we've got all our runs and our times here, right? And I went and calculated the average. And so we've got our average right down here. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to compare that average with the very first time and see if the average time was faster than the first time, right? And so this is our first zoom in, and you'll see here we're looking at 2.4887, 2.48 compared with the first time, 2.49. So 2.48, a little faster than 2.49. Average was a little bit faster for our first zoom in. Second zoom in, we're looking down here. We've got 2.6478 compared to 2.73. So 2.6 compared to 2.7. Yeah, this guy was definitely, his average time was a little faster than his first time, right? And so I went through each car and did that, calculated the average, and then compared it to the first one. And I'm not going to walk you through all of these numbers and show you all of them. Let's just kind of show you the results, right? So, and actually, if you look down here at the bottom of the screen with me, you can see like some greens and reds, right? So all the green ones show an improvement in their average time over their first time, and the reds show there wasn't. Their average time was actually above or greater than, or slower, if you will, than their initial time. So you kind of see the breakdown there. Green, 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 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Interesting. Let's get you back out. We'll show you which cars those were and how that may have looked just a little different than our first glance options. So let's take a look at that. Well, I don't know if that helped or not. So here's kind of what happened. With those new, when looking at the averages, here's what kind of changed up. This Roger Dodger came over from this side to this side, right? And the two governors actually swapped. But what it did for our numbers then was we ended up with 6 and 6. So 6 cars had averages that were under or faster than the initial their initial run, and 6 didn't. So good grief. So let's do one more thing. We're gonna really get into it. We're gonna do some statistics, right? Uh-oh. Math alert, math alert, math alert. I'll try not to get too complicated on you here, but here's what we need to do. In statistics, what we like to do is we like to run tests, and we like to try to decide if something is related or not, and we like to have a particular accuracy, a confidence level, if you will. And so what we like to do is generally a confidence level of 95% is kind of the accepted norm. Now you can get a less confident or more confident, but that's kind of like our general. So what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to do some statistics, and we're going to try to say with 95% confidence whether there is a relationship between the number of runs and the time. So again, the idea is that if we break it in, the more runs we do, the lower the time should go down. And if that's a thing, if more runs means a faster time, then we should be able to tell with 95% confidence whether that is a true relationship or if there's no relationship there, right? And so that's the last thing that I did. Did a little statistics. So I'm gonna bring you in here. I'll show you what I did, and we'll see if we can come out with a good answer here for, does breaking in actually make your car faster? What does the math say? All right, so the last thing that I tried to do was, like I say, try to really use some statistics and really analyze these numbers and see if there is a relationship between the number of times you run the car, right? So if you run the car more and more and more, does it get faster and faster? Is there some improvement? Does breaking in really work? And so the first thing we did was we graphed a line of best fit, or a trend line. And this is a line that what it tries to do is it tries to fit the data the best. Okay? It doesn't go through every point, but if there's some sort of trend, it tries to fit that the best. And basically it kind of calculates the average distance away from each point. And you can think of this kind of like the average line, right? I guess. And it comes with an equation. We don't need to worry about that too much.
Again with the graphs.
Hey, it's not that bad. Fine. If you really want to, you can fast forward about 10 minutes to get to the summary.
You go on for another 10 minutes?
Oh, good grief. One of the other things that that we can do, though, as we use this trend line and analyze this data a little bit more, is we can find what's called the R value. And the R value tells us how closely the line fits the data, right? So in this case, this one is really pretty good, right? As you look at these dots kind of going down like this, you can see that this is kind of the best line I could draw that kind of fits the pattern or the trend. These dots tend to show a trend, right? Now, if the dots are scattered all over the place, then, and it doesn't really look like there's a trend, then we could draw a line based on mathematics and averages. We could draw a line of best fit, but you know what? It might not really fit very good because it might be that the data doesn't show a trend at all. So let's see if we can find one here, maybe like that. Like this, right? So you can see these dots are just all over the place, right? And so mathematically, we calculated the line that is supposed to fit the trend, but you know what? That doesn't, there is no trend really, right? And so a line like this is going to give us a different R value than, say, that first one that we look at here. And so when we look at this R value, what it's going to tell us is how well the line fits the data, okay? And when we look at R values, if you can kind of think of them like a percent, right? If it kind of helps to understand R values if you think of it like a percent, meaning that if the R value is 1 or 100%, then it would go through all the dots. They would be in a straight line, right? It fits it 100%. An R value of 1 means the line fits the data completely. And anything under 1 means it fits it less well, right? And again, this isn't necessarily a percent, but it helps us understand it. So if we were to look at this R value for this line at 0.94, you could think of that as like 94%. It fits the points about 94%-ish if you're comparing that to 100, or not at all is like 0. Anyways, that's just a way to maybe help you understand that what this R value, how it's significant for us, right? So we can use that. We can actually use the R value to say, oh, this does definitely show a trend. But what we're going to do is we're going to take that R value, we're going to do a little bit more work with it, and we're gonna come up with what's called a p-value. And in statistics, when we calculate the p-value and we use a chart, we can determine whether, with a certain amount of confidence, that these two things are related. In this case, whether the number of times we run the car is related to the time going down or up, or maybe it's not related at all, right? And so the p-value is going to tell us whether there is a significant relationship or whether the relationship is not significant, meaning one doesn't affect the other. The differences that we're seeing are going to be due to randomness rather than an actual relationship. Okay, and so that's what I did. I took the R values and I calculated the p-value, and the number here is not probably going to be super beneficial to everybody, but I used those p-values to determine whether there was a significant relationship, meaning with, and our confidence level is going to be 95% on this. So I can be 95% confident that there is a significant relationship between these two, meaning yes, the number of runs did influence the time, and the difference here in these dots was not due to just randomness in the experiment, right? So that's cool, right? So for this first car, this was zoom in number 2, we see a significant relationship, which is super cool, right? This is kind of saying, yep, break-in's a thing, right? So, but let's look across all our cars. This is our Roger Dodger, our first Roger Dodger. You can see that the points aren't as close to the line, right? This isn't as these ones, again, all these points seem pretty close to the line. They show this nice trend. This one doesn't show, oh dear, got the wrong one there. This one doesn't show quite as nice a trend, but it's still showing some improvement, right? And it's R value, or the closeness of these dots to the line, and the trend that it shows was significant. Meaning that this car seems to show some breaking in, right? The difference in the times here is not due to randomness. Our next car, this is our zoom in. Now you can actually see that from the first run, it appeared that most of these were a little bit lower. But what the math is telling us is, even though that first one was a little higher, that was probably just due to randomness, right? Because when we look at the R value and the P value and check, this is not significant, right? We can't say with 95% confidence that there was improvement here. What we're leaning towards is differences due to randomness. This one just as easily could have been this guy down here, and all of them would have been above it. We don't know, right? So not significant. There's not a significant relationship between the number of times we ran. This one is basically saying break-in's not a thing. Let's head to the next car. We got our Jaguar. Again, average-wise, our average trend tends to go up a little bit. However, very slightly. And when you look at the way that these points are scattered around, no trend, not a significant relationship. This does not show that breaking in is a thing. Our next car, our Governor number 2, same deal.
Lots of kind of randomness around here. The average, the trend line is actually sloped up a little bit, meaning that technically the times are getting a little worse. However, that could just be due to some randomness. And the next time we ran this car, it may slope down a little bit, but basically with 95% confidence, we cannot say that break-in is a thing with this. This one, again, is not significant. Jaguar number 1, same deal. You can see the points scattered all around. There's not really a trend. If we try to fit the trend line in, it does kind of slope up a little bit, but you can see how far away from the average each of these points are. There's no real solid trend. This one, again, proved to not be significant. No break-in really being shown here. Rally Cat number 2, same deal. As we look at the trend here, it is getting, the R value is getting a little bit larger. We are getting points that are a little closer to the line. However, this line actually shows an increasing trend in time, so that's not cool. But again, these points were not close enough to any kind of a trend to say that there's a significant relationship. Again, we're chalking this up mostly due to some randomness, and this beginning starting point could have just as easily been down here to start out with, and we might get some of the same patterns. Right? Our Roger Dodger number 2, same deal again. You can see that the points are not very close to the line. Not significant when we analyze the p-value, and so chalk this one up again, just basically due to randomness of the runs, and no break-in showing here. These last 3, the patterns actually start to get a little closer. We do actually show a significant relationship, but it's in the wrong direction, right? This is saying with 95% confidence that this car is getting slower, and that's not due to just some random fluke, that it is definitely showing a pattern of getting slower. So breaking in was not helpful in this case. That's our Rally Cat number 1, or Gasser number 1. You can see the patterns getting even tighter in the wrong direction. Right, there is a significant relationship here, but again, it is not the one we are hoping for. This is actually showing that the car is getting a little bit slower the more that we run it, and then again, that's not due to randomness. Our Governor number 1, same thing. We show a pretty strong pattern headed upwards. This was mathematically significant, meaning there was a relationship. It did get slower, and that was not a random thing. That it was actually a relationship. And then finally, our last one, the second Gasser showed the strongest relationship in the wrong direction. This was a significant relationship, and you can see that the dots are pretty tight around this line, definitely showing an increasing pattern, again, not due to randomness. So, whoo, we got a little bit of everything, right? We got a few that seem to show mathematically that break-in was maybe a thing, but we got a pretty large chunk that showed no significance. And then we did have a few here at the end that actually went the wrong direction. So let's take a look at the cards and talk about this for a minute and see if we can come to some kind of conclusion.
Well, hopefully that wasn't too crazy with all the math and graphs and data. Woo! But what did it tell us? Well, I wanted to visually kind of show you what we learned. So here's the deal. We had 2 cars that with 95% confidence we can say breaking in worked. They got faster the more we ran them down the track. And those changing of times was not due to any kind of randomness in the cars or the track or the timing system. We are 95% confident there was a relationship there. Breaking in worked, right? And then we have a group of cars, 6 cars here, that we could not say with 95% confidence that breaking in was a thing. However, with a number of these cars, remember at first glance, it kind of looked like they were getting faster, but the math said that we can't be 95% sure, right? And so you got to decide. Maybe it is 45% sure enough, right? Or so, and that's kind of the cutoff. We wanted to say with 95% accuracy that yes, breaking in, positive, it's a thing. It wasn't with these cars, right? So the math said that it is more than likely that the difference in times that we saw was due to just some randomness and the track and the timing system and the cars themselves and how they ran. And so so we got this chunk of cars. And then we actually have this chunk of cars over here, and we have 4 cars that ended up actually running slower the more we ran them. And the math said that we can be 95% confident that they definitely were getting slower, and it was not due to randomness of the track or the timing system or whatever, right? And so, this is kind of crazy, right? Our results are kind of all over the place, and I didn't feel like at this point I could answer the question with any kind of confidence, right? And so here's what I did. I decided I needed more data. And so I decided to run the cars all 10 more times and see what would happen. My thought was maybe we just didn't run them long enough. And so once I ran them some more, maybe we would see some of these cars continue to improve, and maybe we would get that. Or it might go the other direction or whatever. But I really wanted this group to go down. I wanted an answer, right? So I ran them 10 more times. And the first thing I found after, I ran them 10 more times, and then I ran them 3 more times, and I got some times. I got some times on them, right? Recorded those times, put it into the computer, tried to compare, see what happened. And the first thing that I found was that the 3 times that I ran them and got times on them after the not last 10 runs, so I had 30 runs, and then on the 31st, 32nd, and 33rd run, I timed them. And I noticed that 31st, 32nd, and 33rd run, for all but one car, was not significantly different than the previous runs, right? So what I saw was 20 times seemed to be enough. There wasn't any change after 20. The 30th time, the 31st, 32nd, 33rd time wasn't significantly different than times that they had already previously run, right? So so that was the first thing. I feel pretty confident that 20 times showed us what we needed to see, except for that one car, right? I said all but one. There was one more car that did get slower. He continued to get slower, and so those 3 times were significantly different than the previous times and in the slower direction. In fact, it was enough that it actually moved him from this group into the slower group, the 95% confident that it did get slower group. So here's the deal. We ended up with 5 cars that definitely got slower, 5 cars that didn't really show any change necessarily, and then 2 that did. I know! So do I break in my cars or not? Is it a big deal? Is it important? Here's the deal. Here's how I'm going to answer your question, Jimmy. I would break in cars, right? I think breaking in is important because, and it's not probably the way we thought, right? We were thinking we got to break in cars so that they're going to be running their fastest when we send them in, right? We were going to break them in to get them faster. And while that may be the case with some cars, there's going to be a handful of cars that is probably not going to make a big difference. But there are a handful of cars that breaking in actually makes them slower. And we want to know that, right? We definitely want to break in our cars because if they're going to get slower, I don't want to send those cars in, right? And so I would say yes, it is important to break in your cars so that you can make a judgment about, whether you want to send them in or not. If you see that your cars are getting slower, after you've broken them all in, that's when you should probably do your testing. So that the cars that got slower are slow, and the cars that didn't really matter, cool, and the cars that are faster. But there's definitely, I think with our data right here, there's going to be some changes to a good group of cars when you break them in, when you run them a little bit. So definitely saying breaking in is important to do. It might not be important because of the way we thought, but it might be important for us to find those cars that are going to get slower, right? So again, 20 times down my track seemed to be enough. Again, on the 30th, 31st, 32nd, all those, I didn't see any difference than 20. And so my track is 22 feet long, and we ran them 20 times. So 20 times 22, yep, that is 440 feet. So I don't know how long your track is or what you're doing to break in cars, but if you can get them running 440 feet, that should be enough. And at that point then, I would start testing cars and deciding what I want to send and what's fastest. That way the ones that have slowed down a little bit, I'll know compared to the ones that have sped up, right? And then hopefully you'll be picking your fastest car to send into the race that you want to race in. And hopefully do the best. So final answer, break in your cars. It's going to give you information. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to get faster, but it's going to give you some information that is important when you want to send in your fastest car. Hey, I hope you enjoyed our show today. That's it for us here on Hot Wheels Race Science. If you've got something that you'd like us to test out, see if it makes your car faster or not, go ahead and put that in the comments below. We'll see if we can set up an experiment and prove whether it works or not. So anyways, continue to watch. We're going to have lots of episodes coming your way. We're going to make you one of the fastest racers around. Anyways, make sure you subscribe if you haven't done that. Check out episodes of The Rookie. If you're new to racing, that's going to get you squared away on all the things that you need to do to become a competitive Hot Wheels racer. And I'm going to see you next time.